Hi everyone and welcome to today's video, which is the November bullet journal setup, and I am really excited to be sharing the month with you guys because I'm really happy with how these spreads ended up turning out like. But before we move on, because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, I'm going to quickly flip through October for you guys. And for October I went with a Halloween theme, and I really enjoyed the theme and using the planner. I didn't really end up filling it out towards the end of the month, mostly because I ended up falling sick, and if my voice sounds a little bit croaky, that is why. But that aside, I'm just hoping for a better month in November, and I'm going to be a little bit more proactive about making sure I use the planner and fill it out and everything like that. So those were the spreads for October, and now I'm going to move on to the November setup. Firstly, doing the cover page, I went with a different sort of setup for this month. I wanted to try something a little bit different, which you'll see and I will explain as the video continues. But in the last setup, I had asked for suggestions for November because for me, November is sort of like a limbo month. There's nothing really special going on for me to be able to center something around it. And so I decided to take one of the suggestions, which was the fantasy and star theme as suggested by Dark Fairy Planning. And the moment I had read that, I was sort of just like, yes, I want to do that. So that is what I decided to go with. Also, thank you all so much for the other suggestions that were made. I will most certainly be doing some of those in the next upcoming months. But I decided to go with a cat elf type of creature for the cover page. If I'm being completely honest, I did my cover page last because I wasn't really too sure with what I exactly wanted to do, and so I just created this cat creature, and I will be incorporating it into future spreads. And I also made this sort of wavy wind looking type of thing with some stars and flowers being carried throughout it and some little dots just to make it look a little bit magical and almost like wind. I feel like it really brought the fantasy theme out. I had originally gone in with colored pencils for the cat, but I wasn't really too happy with how it was coming out, and so I just went over it with some Mildliners. I also decided to go with a color scheme of purple, blue, and with some yellow accents. I just felt like those colors would work nicely together and also just work well with the theme. All in all, I'm really happy that I decided to go with a very simple cover page because the rest of the spreads are really decorative. So that is the cover page, and now I'm working on the next spread, which I decided to make into a sort of like a goal page slash a focus page. I was inspired by ChristineMyLinh, I think is how you pronounce her channel name, but I will link her down below. And her journals have this sort of storybook feel to them, and I really wanted to try something similar to that. So after her cover pages, she tends to do sort of like what the month is set for, or sort of like the theme of the month. And I definitely have a few goals that I've been wanting to work on, so I thought maybe I could incorporate a goal setting type of page since I had an extra spread that I needed to make. So that is what I decided to do here. I went with a elf sitting underneath a windy tree with the same cat looking creature and a fawn. I really challenged myself when I was doing this particular page because, to be honest, I am not confident in drawing nature and animals, so drawing the tree and drawing the fawn was a big challenge for me because I am not used to drawing anything like that. I'm mostly just used to drawing people. That is what I'm most comfortable with. But one of the goals that I had with my bullet journal was to challenge myself creatively in terms of the style of drawing and objects and whatever I choose to draw. And so that is what I decided to go with, and I really love the way that this spread ended up coming out. I think it's one of my favorites, especially because it really challenged me creatively to be able to make it look somewhat decent. But that aside, I mostly use Mildliners to color in the spreads and colored pencils. I only used one shade of Copic Markers, which was a skin tone color. But I was really wary about using Copic Markers in this spread because of the fact that they will for sure bleed through the paper, and I didn't want it to bleed through the paper, but I wanted to have more color in these spreads, so I just had to use my Mildliners. And I am thinking about investing in a larger range of the Tombow brush pens to use specifically for bullet journaling, because they don't really tend to bleed through the paper that much. And so if you have any ideas of where I can buy these sets for the Tombow brush pens, that would be much appreciated, because I'm thinking for sure for next year those would come in handy if I want to continue doing spreads like this. But I have now finished coloring in this page, and the last thing that I'm doing is just filling out the goals that I want to focus on for this month. I did mess up with my spacing a little bit, but that is okay because there's not much I can do about that. And for next time, I can always definitely just think ahead for spacing and everything. Also, the pen that I used to write down my goals is the Muji black gel pen in the 0.38 tip. But that is basically these two spreads done, and this is what the very beginning of the November setup looks like. So now I am moving on to the next spread, which is the monthly page and my calendar setup. And so I'm going with the same style of calendar because I really like the way that this works, and the spacing and everything is just perfect. So that is what I'm going with. I also wanted to pull in some of the colors that I was using in the first two spreads, and I just made a line of that across the top. Also, I don't think I've mentioned this so far, but the Mildliners that I'm using are Mild Gold, the Smoke Blue color, and Mild Violet, I believe is what the names are. For the calendar spread, I decided to make a few hanging stars at the top just to bring in the star element from the theme, and then I am pretty much doing the same setup for the legend section. I think next month I might do something a little bit different for that. I also decided to make some little mushroom people on one side, and also I added in the swirly wind and the stars right next to them. I think that is probably one of my favorite swirly effects that I did throughout the entire spread. But to color those in, again, I'm using Mildliners and just colored pencils. Those are just what was easiest for me at the current time point. But I really love the way that they came out, and they look really, really cute. And then on the other side, since I had a little bit of more blank space, I drew the same weird cat thing with some mushrooms, and it was getting ready to pounce on the little mouse that it was holding onto in the spread before. And I also drew in the same wind effect, and I just really love the way that it looks. It just brings everything in together and just ties everything so perfectly, and it just gives it this whimsical effect, which was something I was looking for. But that is basically the calendar spread done, and I really love the way that it came out. The next spread that I am working on is the habit tracker page, and it's basically the same setup as the previous months. I really like the way that this setup is. It just works really well, and I just find it really simple, and it just works well with my brain, so I don't really find a need to change it up. I did, however, change up the sort of headers and the little sort of added decorations to the page. So where I would normally put down what each icon means, I decided to draw around that a parchment paper type of design, just to give it a little bit of a old feel. I just thought it would be something really cute just to add into the fantasy theme. And then I am writing down the icons and what they mean. I am basically keeping the same. I'm not really changing it up. I decided to swap out what one of the icons mean, and that is really about it. I ended up stuffing up on marking out the days. I had forgotten the 11th, which had stuffed up the rest of the tracker. So thankfully I had realized that while it was still in pencil and not in pen. So then I finished that, and then I drew out the dot grid, which I love the effect of, but it just takes up so much time and your hands start to hurt after a while, and you sort of feel like you're seeing things and hallucinating because you're just staring at the dots. But that aside, for this page I decided to go with a warrior / knight. And so that is what I decided to draw in the corner, since I had quite a bit of space left. And behind him I also have the same swirly wind effect with the stars and the little bubble dot things. Again, I used Mildliners to color him in, and I also tried to hold my pen at an angle so you guys could see what was happening, because with the way that I hold my pens, my hand tends to cover the view, which can be a little bit frustrating if you're trying to see what's going on. So I tried to be more mindful of that while I was setting up and coloring in everything. Also, I'm really happy with how this guy ended up coming out like. I'm actually really bad at drawing men, so I was really happy with him. It's not really anything special, it's a really simple drawing, but I was really happy with it. So the last thing that I'm going to do with this page is just fill out the bits in the habit tracker, since I was filming this on the 1st of November. And that is the habit tracker page done, and now I am moving on to the page besides that, which is a new addition to the journal. I wanted to track my moods, and I also wanted to track whether I was keeping up with a drawing challenge that I wanted to do for November. It is basically same concept as Inktober, if you are familiar with that. Basically, I just want to draw something each day. I'm not limiting myself to a medium. Just if I can get a drawing out that day, then I've completed the challenge. And so I decided to go with a decorative tracker style for that. And I split the page in half. The top half I am using to track my moods, and I had drawn in the skeleton of the stars, basically really ugly squiggly stars, and then with my fine liner I had gone over that a lot more nicely. And then for the 30-day drawing challenge, I decided to go with the heads of the cat creature, and so I will fill that out once I am done with this top section. I also chose out the colors that I wanted to use to track out my moods, which I just zoomed in there to show you guys what the colors meant. And then I am now working on the 30-day drawing challenge section. I also numbered the little doodles so I know what day the star or head was associated with. I've also been really curious to try out this style of tracker, so I thought it would be a fun way to incorporate it somehow and see whether it was useful for me or not. Also, for the little cat things, I went in and drew in some faces for them just to add in a little bit of cuteness. And since I had filmed this on the 1st, I had gone in and filled out the first head for November. And then we are moving on to, I promise, the last decorative spread for November, but I wanted to create a little inspirational page before my weekly section. This is also inspired by Christine and her journal setups, but I went with a elf sitting down on the ground with the same wind swirly pattern around her. Originally, I wanted her to be more in the middle of the page, but with how everything ended up turning out, like, she ended up being more on the top of the page, but that is okay. I can always try again next time. After I am done coloring her in, I decided to write down a quote that I had found on Google, and in my own handwriting I am going to be writing, "Sometimes the smallest step in the right direction ends up being the biggest step of your life. Tiptoe if you must, but take the step." Felt that it resonated really well with me, so I just wanted to put that down. And after that, I am moving on to my weekly pages, and I'm only going to be creating 2 spreads for now because I wanted to try out a different spread for the second week of November. But this first spread here, I am creating 8 boxes, 1 for each day of the week, and then a extra box to put down any events that's happening for the week. I normally wouldn't put down a box for Sunday, but I thought that even if I don't end up using it, I can always have it for journaling or to make it a creative space. And then the second spread that I wanted to try was a vertical layout, and my hope is that I can sort of block off sections and put down my to-dos that way. And I'm just curious to see how this ends up working out, because so far I've only done horizontal type of spreads or box spreads in this journal, so I was just curious to see how a vertical layout would end up looking like. And then the last thing that I'm creating is my master to-do list, which is just from the scraps of making the grid inserts. And then after that, we are basically done. I really enjoyed getting to do this theme for November, and I'm really happy with how all of these spreads came out. There are a few places where I know I could have done a little bit better, but there's always next time, and you know, that's the fun of bullet journaling. So let me know what you guys think of the theme down below, and also let me know what theme you guys are doing for your bullet journals for November, because I'm curious about that. I will try my best to link everything that I've used in the description box in case you are curious about it. And I think that is about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day or night, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!